We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Sunday morning edition, Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. You know, we got ourselves just a jam-packed recap of week 2 in college football. For those of you who maybe took a week off last week, we're going to go early from here on out. I just think with the football schedule, it makes a little bit more sense. We'll get our Sunday show in before the NFL. You can watch it throughout the day. But we got a lot to react to. That big Oklahoma win, I actually think people are focusing on the wrong thing with that game. We'll discuss that. Just a total, absolute, colossal meltdown from Billy Napier in Florida. By the way, I can see the chat's already fired up about Kentucky with very much the same, losing a winnable game to Ole Miss at home. We'll discuss Mark Stoops, some very questionable clock management and things of that nature. Then we'll hit on the rest of a busy weekend in college football. Alabama, does it matter that they won 73-0? Arch Manning looks good. Does that matter? And then I think we'll get to a couple other interesting things. Bill Belichick basically acknowledging that weird story that he has barred the New England Patriots from UNC. And I hate to do it, but we are going to talk a little Nico Iamaleava because it's quickly turning into a cautionary tale. You know, we don't do Lifetime movie of the week anymore, but it's getting really bad. I actually do feel a little bit bad for Nico, but again, you know, these are the decisions that the people around him made. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders as everybody comes in on a Sunday. Make sure you're subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We will be going live every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and maybe more during college football season. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that bell notification so you know when we're going live. And also, if you do listen on Apple or Spotify, or you listen on Pod, we are available on Apple and Spotify. You can find us there. Leave a 5-star rating and review if you do prefer the audio pod. Really quickly before we get started. By the way, week 2 of college football is done. Week 1 of the NFL is here. And we are so proud. We are so happy to be working with Circa Casino, Circa Sportsbook. Listen, we know about that incredible facility that they have in Las Vegas. Biggest sportsbook in the world, stadium swim outside, the best place in Las Vegas to watch games. But I keep telling you, they have opened up a replica sportsbook, Franklin, Kentucky, Mint, Kentucky Downs. It's brand new. Check it out. It's on that Kentucky-Tennessee border. And the bottom line is this, right? It's football season. You know, with NFL kicking off, you need a place to watch games. We got a million apps that you got to download. You don't need to download Paramount. You don't need to go to YouTube to watch all these games. If you're on that Kentucky-Tennessee border or Indiana, Ohio, all these places are driving distance. Mint, Kentucky Downs, the Circa Sportsbook. Do me a favor, by the way. If you go, make sure to tag at Aaron_Torres on Twitter. And of course, Circa Sports. Let everybody know that Torres sent you. We really do appreciate your support. With that said, it is a busy Sunday in sports. There is no more time to waste. Appreciate everybody joining us. The chat is already humming. Drop your week 2 thoughts, but no more time to waste. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, we're going to get to Billy Napier's meltdown in a minute. We're going to get to Mark Stoops' meltdown in a minute. But listen, there was one super marquee game that we absolutely have to discuss. It came in Norman, Oklahoma, only top 25 matchup of the week 2 college football slate. And I'll say this, I think it actually kind of largely lived up to my personal expectations. I thought it was a good back and forth game, even though Oklahoma ends up winning by 2 scores. Yeah, I just said it. Yeah, I gave away a little bit of the punchline, but final score, Oklahoma 24, Michigan 13. Oklahoma in what we know is essentially a make or break year for Brent Venables. He went out, he made the big moves in the offseason. They get their first signature win. And I'll say this, one, I actually think that's in some ways we're actually talking about the wrong thing with Oklahoma in a good way, because there's a lot of good to talk about. But two, also on top of it, you start to look at the schedule now. Some of those games that look like losses, or I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, you got to be fired up. But let's talk about this game. And listen, we all know what the story is, right? We all know what the story was coming in. We all know what the story was coming into the season. It was the transfer quarterback, John Napier. And much like the quarterback that he was playing against, Bryce Underwood, who we'll talk about at some point, this was kind of the spotlight game. Oklahoma plays Illinois State in week 1. I don't know how many of you pulled up a streaming service to watch that one. That's why you got to go to the Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs. You can watch all these games. But I don't know how many of you pulled up the a streaming service to watch week 1. But we all know John Napier, Oklahoma, they're not going to be defined by what they do against Illinois. But the schedule gets much tougher starting week 2, starting Saturday night, the 6th of September against Michigan. Bryce Underwood, the freshman quarterback coming in, John Napier, the transfer to Oklahoma. Listen, we knew what the reputation was with Napier coming in, kind of this dual threat guy, does a little bit of everything. And I got to give credit where it's due, right? You look at a guy that came in with super high expectations coming in, a guy that many, including me, believed was the number 1 player in the transfer portal, or at least the number 1 quarterback. But I do think there were serious conversations, right? Okay, it's great you did it again at Washington State. It's great you did it against Pac-2 opponents last year, but you're mostly playing, the San Diego States, the Oregon States, the whatever. What's it going to be like when you play big boy football? Well, frankly, kind of looked exactly like it did last year at Washington State. Napier, to his credit, in my opinion, completely controlled that game when he had the ball in his hands, okay? The stats tell us one thing: 271 yards passing, 21 of 34 passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The interception, by the way, was a tipped pass, but had the ball. Oh, by the way, also 74 yards rushing with 2 rushing touchdowns. So first off, already he's probably the best player with the ball in his hands from a run perspective. He certainly can handle things from a pass perspective. But when I look at John Napier, what stood out to me, and I hate to use like the cliche buzzword, talking point, whatever, but it was kind of the moxie, right? It was when you needed a big play, he found a way. It was when you needed a first down, he kind of always knew where to go with the ball, what to do. The moment was never too big. Checks down, takes off with his legs. Is he the fastest guy? It doesn't matter, because he just always seemed to find a crease in the defense. And, every time they needed a big play, he largely got it. So John Napier is the headliner. Let me also say this, though, because I think it's getting a little bit lost in the shuffle. Oklahoma, and this to me is the bigger story, I think, is that you now have paired an elite quarterback with what I believe to be just one of the best defenses in college football. And this was the crazy part about Oklahoma, and we talked about it all last year, and really all of the summer, heading into the season. But this Oklahoma defense, I think it's easy to forget. It was a top 30 defense nationally, which one is impressive considering who they played last year at LSU, Alabama, Texas, whatever. But Tennessee, by the way, was obviously very good. But they had a top 30 defense. The issue was they finished 113th nationally in total offense. And so the two big questions were, one, can John Napier provide the offense that you need? But two, defensively, can that be the difference? Can you keep the level defensively that you were at while also improving the offense? And if you do, all of a sudden we're talking about a college football playoff contender, an SEC championship contender, certainly a team that's capable of at least getting to Atlanta. That defense lived up to expectations, right? In this game, I think it's worth noting, again, if you just look at the box score, Michigan with 288 yards of total offense, you say, okay, Michigan actually moved the ball pretty well. Not if you watch the game, because Michigan had one play of 75 yards. So a 75-yard run by Justice Haynes set up their only touchdown. You take out that play, that's basically 213 yards of offense right there. And then they got another 20-plus yards on the final series of the game when Oklahoma was up 2 scores And on top of it, they were in prevent defense. So you take out one play and prevent defense when you have the game in hand. That's well under 200 yards. The one touchdown was just a bust. And then, oh, by the way, one of the field goals came off of a muffed punt. So the defense was lights out all night. And so if you're an Oklahoma fan, to me, that's what has to be so exciting about this team at this moment in time. You have that dude at quarterback. You have, on top of it, a defense that I think has a chance to be special. And I know Michigan, freshman quarterback on the road, whatever. I don't care. You held them to basically 200 yards of total offense. Again, take out one play and we're at 200 yards of total offense. And then on top of that, I also think there's this. You got the quarterback. You got the defense. And listen, there's no easy schedule in the SEC. But all of a sudden, when I look at this schedule for Oklahoma, I think it's kind of sort of manageable, right? Or it's getting more manageable by the week. First of all, you have the big out-of-conference win. We know that out-of-conference wins are going to carry weight. The committee with this, what was the stat again? The schedule strength stat or whatever. They're going to value teams that really push themselves in the out-of-conference, the anti-Indiana, if you will. So you hosted Michigan, which just won a national championship 2 years ago at home. But then beyond that, I think here's the important part. You look at the rest of the SEC, all of a sudden games that you just said, I don't really know about, back in July and August, all of a sudden it feels a lot different today than it did 2 months ago, 2 weeks ago even, doesn't it? Look at Texas. Listen, we'll talk Arch Manning later in the show. I'm not ready to crown him because he was good against San Jose State. But all of a sudden, let me ask you this, neutral field, 50-50 fan split. Who do you trust more in a big spot, John Napier or Arch Manning? I've seen them both against pretty good defenses. I think I know who I trust. I think it's John Napier. Not saying that Oklahoma is going to win that game, but all of a sudden that game looks a lot different. Alabama. It's yes, you have to go on the road, but again, Alabama's another one. I'm sorry that it's hard for me to get excited about a 73-0 win over UL Monroe when all you've been hearing all week is how terrible you are. So Alabama all of a sudden. By the way, LSU, who I include myself, I crowned them after week 1. Oh, you go to Clemson, you get that win. You're unbelievable. You know who else almost got a win at Clemson? Troy. Maybe LSU isn't that good. South Carolina wasn't great yesterday. Ole Miss, by the way, looks beatable as they struggled at Kentucky. I just bring it up because I look at this situation for Oklahoma and I sit there and say, I think there are more wins on the schedule, especially if John Napier plays in the manner that he did. But I give Brent Venables credit, right? This was a make or break year. We knew the defense was good. One, he takes over the defense. He says, enough is enough. Nobody else is doing my job that I can do better than them. And then two, listen, say what you want, right? Oklahoma is one of those schools that has the resources to pull something off. They needed a new offensive coordinator. They didn't necessarily go for the biggest name. They went for the guy who had the offense with the quarterback. They bring them both. It translates and they have success. Really quickly, I'm going to spend a half a minute on Michigan. I'm not going to overreact to Michigan. It was interesting to me on Michigan because I think to me it was hard to be too critical because this game kind of went how I expected. Now, listen, I get stuff wrong all the time. But what did I say? I said I think it's about to be about a 24-14 game is what I believe I said on the show on Thursday afternoon. And I said, look, Bryce Underwood, freshman quarterback on the road, do you think they're going to just let him throw the ball 40 times a game? Do you want to, if he throws 3 interceptions, you want to break his spirits and whatever? And so this is kind of exactly how I thought the game would go. But I also have to acknowledge that it is a little bit disappointing that you really were in position where a player or two could be the difference, and you never really let Bryce Underwood loose. Now, the stats are going to tell you one thing. The game will tell you another. Bryce Underwood, 9 of 24 passing, 142 yards. That doesn't sound good. About 4 or 5 of those passes were on the final drive of the game. And so I don't think Bryce Underwood was bad because I just don't think he really had a chance to show what he was capable of. Now, to me, and again, this is where I disagree with a lot of people, is this is going to sound like a loser mentality, okay? And I'm usually full speed ahead, be an alpha, go get W's on the road, whatever. I don't really think for Michigan it's about being great this year, okay? And if that makes me loser mentality, I'll never be a champion, whatever, okay. That's fine. But at the same time, what I would say is if you're Michigan, here's the bottom line. This is probably, right up there with your toughest road game of the year. You do have at USC, at Nebraska, but there's no Oregon, there's no Penn State. You get Ohio State at home, and we know the recent history of that series. So I only bring it up because, to me, it's hard for me to get too fired up because you were in a one-score game at Oklahoma on the road when you were playing against, oh, by the way, a guy that is going to be in Heisman contention all season long, at least I believe. And so, yes, would you have liked to see the coaching staff let Bryce Underwood loose a little bit more? But you know what you don't want to see? You don't want to see Bryce Underwood, throw the ball 35 times, throw 3 picks, and his confidence is shot. So now, yes, you lose the game. Yes, it's frustrating. I don't think I saw anything from Michigan that has me big picture concerned. I think it's actually the opposite. I saw exactly what I expected to see, and now you move on. Now you get better. Bryce Underwood has a tough road start under his belt, and you see what you can do from here. Michigan's schedule is interesting. Remember, next 2 weeks, no Sharon Moore. Remember, he's suspended for 2 games, but they claimed that he didn't want to be suspended for the Oklahoma game because he played at Oklahoma. He wanted to go back to his alma mater. Central Michigan, then at Nebraska. That's certainly the interesting one. 2 Saturdays from now. Later in the year at USC. But as I mentioned, there is no Penn State. There is no Oregon. Illinois, if you believe they're a contender, there's no Illinois on the schedule either. So I just bring it up because I actually feel okay about Michigan coming out of this game. It kind of went how I thought. If you're a Michigan fan and you're frustrated, I'm not going to tell you how to feel, but kind of feels like things could have been worse. All right, this is what we're going to do. Great open to the show. The chat is humming. We'll get to some of your questions and comments. Darren already says, I can't wait for basketball to start. Darren, I'm assuming you're a Kentucky fan, so I'll tell you what. This is what we'll do. We'll come back. We'll talk about 2 colossal meltdowns on Saturday. Billy Napier, he just lost his job. Not officially. Like, he's not fired today, but he will be. And Mark Stoops, man, another opportunity to pick up a big win. Can't get out of his own way. Can't make the right in-game decisions at the right time. I see the chat fired up. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Gonna be back. So we're going to get to 2 colossal meltdowns in a second. By the way, I realized Darren said, I wish it was basketball season already. You might be a Kentucky fan, my man. You might also just be a Florida fan because we got to get to Florida in just a minute. We're about to. Before we do, though, you know what I got to do? I got to thank my friends. I got to thank my partners. I got to thank the official ticketing app of the Aaron Torres pod. I got to go ahead and thank SeatGeek. Okay, so SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app. Love them. Over 28 million downloads. And the great part about SeatGeek is this. They tell you every single ticket, good, bad, should you get it, should you not. They rate every ticket 1 through 10, give it a green dot or a red dot. Green means go ahead and purchase. Red means, you might want to hold off on that purchase. So, number one ticketing app in America, friends of the Aaron Torres pod, ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres pod. But here's the best part. They love me and they love you, because here's the deal. SeatGeek now is offering a special offer for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. That's all you got to do. You got to go to SeatGeek.com or download the app. When you check out, use promo code Torres at checkout. Promo code Torres at checkout gets you $20 off your first purchase. So maybe you're a Kentucky fan. You're already thinking of football to basketball season. You're like, oh, Purdue's coming to town in a month in that exhibition game. I'm going to go ahead and get some basketball tickets. By the way, Florida tipping off in Vegas. Maybe you're just like, I'm just ready for basketball season. I need some tickets for basketball, for football, for whatever. But also, maybe your team stinks and you're like, I'm going to go to a concert on Saturday. I'm going to go to a show. You can get $20 off any ticket anywhere on SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. Use promo code Torres. Like I said, it gets you $20 off every ticket. It's not just college football, NFL, Major League Baseball, shows, concerts, maybe college basketball. But SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears. And let's go ahead. You know, one of the things we had a Saturday, one ranked on ranked matchup, Oklahoma, Michigan, right? So you knew something weird was going to happen. And the 3:30 window just felt like weird stuff was going on. Deion Sanders was playing his third string quarterback and, you know, in meaningful snaps. And there's weird stuff going on. And I remember Clemson, right? So Clemson was losing to Troy. And the internet was freaking out, as they should have been, because Clemson did not look good. But I had the SEC network on. And at the time, Florida in the second half was up 9-6 on the South Florida Bulls. And I put out a tweet. I just said, look, I know we're all focused on Clemson's meltdown, and we were all, including me, wrong on the Clemson Tigers. But just pay attention to this South Florida game, because Florida does not want to lose to the South Florida Bulls. That would be a disaster. Well, fast forward, and in what is one of the most abominable, unexplainable losses from a coaching perspective that I have ever seen, the Florida Gators fall to the South Florida Bulls 18-15 in the swamp. Great picture right there, producer Matt. That is a metaphor for the state of Florida football. And a couple quick things. One, this was a colossal coaching failure by Billy Napier. Two, this is also worth noting. I feel like this is the unofficial end of the Billy Napier era. We look at the schedule. It's not going to happen. He's not going to get the wins he needs. And three, I'll also say this. Just disappointed with even his disposition after the game. Let's go ahead and dive in. And listen, I could sit here and I could go ahead and go play by play. The first quarter, this happened. The second quarter, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the last 3 minutes. And in the last 3 minutes, Billy Napier quite literally making every wrong decision that he possibly could. It was unbelievable. It was, if you had a coaching textbook and said, this is the right decision, he made the wrong decision every single step of the way. So Florida's up 16-15. Let's start with that. They get the ball back with about under 2 minutes to go. I want to make sure that I have all these numbers correct, and I know it's going to be a little bit nitty-gritty, but I think the context matters. They get the ball back with 2:49 to go. They're up 16-15. It's bad enough that you're up 16-15, but it's not terrible. South Florida has 2 timeouts plus the 2-minute timeout, right? So all you got to do, run the ball. And in a worst-case scenario, if you just 3 straight runs, they have to use their 2 timeouts, and they got to go to the length of the field with about 2 minutes to go, and no timeouts, just to put themselves in field goal range, okay? So that's one, is all you got to do is run the ball. 2:49 left. What does Billy Napier do? First down, incompletion. Not ideal. What was that, Billy Napier? Weird. Okay, whatever. Second down, you run the ball. Okay, a couple seconds come off the clock. Third down, you throw the ball again. And so how about this? South Florida gets the ball back. Remember, Florida got the ball back up 1 with 2:49 to go. South Florida gets the ball back with 2:21 left. 28 seconds come off the clock. And how about this? 0 timeouts used for South Florida. They get the ball back, and they have the 2-minute timeout. So that in and of itself, just a totally disastrous decision, but that pales in comparison to what happened in the final 2 minutes. First of all, we all saw the big penalty, okay? South Florida's driving. Florida has a player. Let me see if I can find his name real quick. I think it's Brendan Bett. You know what he got thrown out of the game for? Unsportsmanlike conduct for, how about this? Spitting on a South Florida player. And I'm sorry for yelling into the mic, but let me say this. What has been the biggest story in sports over the last 72 hours? Oh, I don't know. Jalen Carter giving Dak Prescott the old Hawk Tua, okay? Like, it was the number one story in sports. Jalen Carter getting ejected from the Cowboys-Eagles game before a snap was played for spitting on an opponent. So if you do nothing else, just keep your saliva to yourself, okay? It feels like a good life lesson in general, but especially on the football field. Don't be spitting on other people. By the way, it's just weird behavior. I've thought about doing a lot of things to a lot of people in my day when I'm mad at them. You know, I give a couple people a slap, give them a slug. Never thought about spitting on somebody, okay? But one time, and it happens right after Jalen Carter, inexcusable. So that's one 15-yard penalty. And then from there, it just gets worse, okay? And we won't go play-by-play, but we're going to kind of sort of go play-by-play because you get to the 145 mark, okay? And at this point, South Florida is now in field goal range. They got a Grammatica for a kicker. I think Grammatica missed like a 57-yard field goal by about a yard earlier in the quarter. Let me see here. Yeah, he missed a 58-yarder by like a yard. So you know he's got a leg on him. He's a freaking Grammatica, okay? They're already in field goal range, about 145 left. They run a play. Billy Napier does not call a timeout. Now, Billy Napier has 2 timeouts now. Keep in mind. Does not call a timeout. And we're sitting there thinking, what are they doing? Okay, he's trying to save time for whatever, blah, 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 blah. But as soon as he doesn't call timeouts, you know what I start thinking? Well, there has to be a bigger plan. He's going to let them score, and they're going to get the ball back with whatever time left, and he'll have his 2 timeouts to try to go the length of the field. No. So South Florida runs a play at 145. And remember, they're already in field goal range. Run another play with a minute to go. So 45 seconds comes off the clock. No timeout for Billy Napier. Then it goes down to 22 seconds. And so at this point, you're sitting there saying, like, okay, the first one. Okay, so at the 145 mark, you don't call the timeout. At the 1 minute mark, they have a 6-yard run inside the red zone. You have to let them score. And listen, I'm not a coach, and I never come on this show and claim that I know more than the coaches who are paid millions. But it's pretty common sense. You either have to use your timeouts and just try to force them to kick a field goal and get the ball back with whatever time you have left, or you got to let them score. So then what happens? Play is run at 145, doesn't call the timeout. Play is run at 1 minute, doesn't call the timeout. Then in 22 seconds, he decides to call a timeout, and you say, okay, well, now he's just definitely going to let him score because they're inside the 10-yard line. I know, calls a second timeout with about, whatever it is, doesn't even matter, 18, 17 seconds left. South Florida runs another play, lets the clock run down to 3 seconds, kicks the field goal, game winner. So first of all, bottom line, everything that Billy Napier could have done wrong over the final 2 minutes, he did. Matt, this is your 2-minute clip, just so you know. Everything he could have done wrong, he did. Doesn't let time run off the clock when they're on offense. Gets it with 2:49 left. Easily could have forced South Florida, to use its timeouts. They do not. Punts the ball away. You get a player ejected for spitting, which I'm sorry, 2 days after Jalen Carter is inexcusable. You don't use your timeouts. You don't let them score. You then use your timeouts. You then put them in position where all they have to do is make a chip shot field goal with a freaking Grammatica as a head coach, or as a kicker, Yeah, we know how that's going to end with a game-losing field goal. So first of all, credit to Alex Golesh, but some big picture things. First of all, you know what was especially frustrating for me? Billy Napier's comments after the game. Because listen, I know there's no way to answer these questions correctly. And you screwed up. You screwed up. But producer Matt, you can put up the first tweet of the quotes. Graham Hall, who's one of their writers at 24/7. Producer Matt and I met him at the Final Four. Very nice guy. Florida now a basketball school, by the way. Billy Napier's first comments. I think that we can do much better. We can coach much better. We can play much better. Obviously, I don't like these any more than fans do. We have to do much better. Listen, it's year 4. I think we're past we have to do much better. We have to take care of business. And I think what's frustrating is, you know what these quotes sound like? Quotes after a bad loss in year 1 from Billy Napier. Quotes after a bad loss in year 2 under Billy Napier. Remember that loss at Utah to open the season when they couldn't even line up in punt formation correctly or punt return, whatever it was? These are the same comments. By the way, last year, you get blown out by Florida at home in week 1. Same comments. You get blown out by Texas A&M in your home opener in the SEC. Same comments. At some point, stop making the same freaking comments and start making adjustments. Producer Matt, you could share the second one, but I think at this point it's irrelevant. It's just so frustrating that this is the discourse coming out of this program in year 4. Second quote. I think the procedural penalties, obviously we can live with technical penalties. There's always going to be a handful of those. The ones that keep you up at night are player decision-making. They're under my leadership. It's ultimately my responsibility. Yeah, player procedure penalties aren't great. You know what else isn't great? You know what else is under your control? How about play clock, play management, things of that nature? So a couple quick things here. One, I think it's unofficially over for Billy Napier. We're recording here at 11:32 on Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning, heading into week 1 of the NFL. I don't think by the end of week 1 he's getting fired, but he's not winning the games that are needed. But what I'll say, and we'll get to the schedule in a second, what I think is interesting is it's an interesting loss from this perspective. I think it actually gives a lot of Florida fans some clarification on like, okay, this is definitively who our program is. And I think it gives them some closure. I'll give credit. My buddy, I won't name his name, but I have a lawyer who's a Gator fan. Okay, when I say a lawyer, I don't mean like I'm in trouble with the law. I did something stupid, knock on wood. He handles my contracts. If we have a deal with the whatever, he just looks them over. But he's a Gators fan. And I texted him after the game, and I said, hey, only 50-something days till Todd Golden's Gators take the floor. And we were joking back and forth. But what he said was, and I don't want to speak for all Gators fans, but I think he speaks for most when he says, in some way, almost I could read it almost verbatim, but he said, at some ways, I'm basically at peace because now I don't have to keep talking myself into maybe this is the guy. Maybe he'll figure it out. Maybe in year 3, maybe in year 4, maybe in year 5, whatever. I just know that this is what this guy is. He's going to lose. First of all, the offense that he runs, and my buddy brought this up during the summer to me, and I'll give my buddy credit because he wasn't one of these people that got hyped up by the win streak to end the season. He was one that was realistic that said, listen, I think given who Billy Napier is, like 9-3 is the ceiling. And I think, he told me in the summer, 8-4 is what I'm hoping for. And I think 7-5 is back in play. But the point is that after this loss, he basically said like, look, dude, it gives me closure. It gives me some sort of peace knowing he's not the guy. This is who we are always going to be. First of all, with this offense that Billy Napier is still the play caller of, guess what? With this offense, what this means is pretty simple. This is always who we're going to be. We're never going to be in a position to just blow people out. We're never going to be in a position to just be up against good teams 24-10 with 4 minutes to go and whatever. It's always going to be this nip and tuck back and forth game. But beyond that, he said, this is who we're going to be. We're going to make dumb decisions at the worst possible time. Billy Napier's game management is not what it needs to be. And we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot and we're going to lose and it doesn't matter. And so I think that's where most Florida fans are. I think, by the way, even at this time last year, I was an advocate of keeping Billy Napier because you keep the team together. You do have a talented roster with DJ Lagway. I think we're past that point now. If you lose everybody in the process of firing the coach, so be it, because guess what? They're not getting better. They look like the exact same team as week 1 and week 2 of last year, and they look like they've regressed pretty much everywhere, including, by the way, a quarterback. And I'm not going to pin this on DJ Lagway, a couple drop passes, whatever, but does he look significantly better than a year ago? No. And if he's not, then guess what? That falls on the coach. Lastly, producer Matt, you can pop up the schedule whenever you want. The bottom line is like, look, another reason why, for people who are like, oh, you're being too negative, just look at the schedule. Okay. So this is why this loss is so big. Because of your next 10 games, you had to start 2-0 against Long Island and against South Florida. Here's why. Because the rest of your schedule is insane. Just the next 4. Let's just take the next 4. At LSU next week, at Miami next week, or the week after, by Texas at home, at A&M. So just your next 4. At LSU, at Miami, Texas at home, at A&M. And that doesn't include, by the way, Georgia, at Ole Miss, Tennessee, or Florida State. Here's the crazy part. I looked this up the other day. I looked this up on Saturday night. Of Florida's 10 remaining opponents, 10 teams are left on the schedule. They have 8 teams that are currently ranked. One of the teams that is not ranked is Mississippi State, who just beat Arizona State and will be ranked in the next top 25 poll, I would assume. So you just talk about a colossal failure. This was it. This was a game you had to win. And now you look at that schedule at LSU, at Miami. By the way, at Ole Miss late in the year. Florida State all of a sudden looks like a real team. Tennessee clearly has not dropped off with Joey Aguilar. Ole Miss, whatever. We could go on and on. This is a disaster. This was a game you had to win. This is a game you don't win. And it's a matter of if not when. Billy Napier is no longer the head coach of the Florida Gators. All right, really quickly, I do want to talk about another meltdown of coaching proportions. Just a brutal day of coaching. And it came in Lexington, Kentucky. And so let's switch gears to just another disappointing effort. And it's not the win-loss effort, right? It's a situation at Kentucky where the same things that have popped up for the last 10, 12 years popped up on Saturday. Kentucky loses to Ole Miss 30-23. Yeah, the last-second field goal pushed it over, plus the cover. Lane Kiffin even apologized for that after. But this was about Mark Stoops not knowing how to manage the clock, not knowing how to manage pretty much anything in game. This has been a frustrating part for Kentucky fans. And producer Matt, you can monitor for comments from Kentucky fans because there's a few of them. But this is who Mark Stoops has been. This is especially frustrating. This was a winnable game. You left points on the field. Let's go ahead and discuss. And I think big picture with this one, because I think there's going to be non-Kentucky fans coming into this one saying, you are a 10-point underdog against Ole Miss. How can you complain? Well, first of all, 10-point underdog, but let's remember the context here. First of all, I give Kentucky fans a ton of credit because especially early in the year, they come to these games, they show out, they buy tickets, they support their team. They want to believe that things are going to be different, right? And by the way, Mark Stoops, the media who covers him, they have done a good job of convincing us this thing was going to be different. We all saw the motivated Mark Stoops meme over the course of the last couple months. We all saw that. We all saw Kentucky media convincing us that it's different and he's motivated and he's reprioritized his whatever in the transfer portal and blah, 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 and this and that. And so you have that. You have a little bit of positive energy around the program. And then again, the fans showed out. You're facing a team that you beat last year, which there was only one in the SEC. And so I could see the situation where Kentucky fans are talking themselves into, like, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can get this win. Maybe we can build some momentum. Nobody expects us to go 10-2 against this schedule, but can we build some momentum going into the tough part of the schedule? Instead, you lose a game that you easily could have won, and you lose it because of dumb procedural stuff. No different than what Mark Stoops, that's kind of been his calling card, unfortunately, over the course of his time at Kentucky. Really quickly, you don't need me to tell you, but before the half, it was just, frankly, it was maybe the worst 2-minute drill that I've ever seen. Matt, you can pop up the tweet if you want, because I put up a tweet. I said this quite literally the worst 2-minute drill that I've ever seen in the history of football. It's not even debatable. We'll be telling our grandkids about this 100 or 50 years from now, okay? So for people who weren't watching the game closely, Ole Miss is up 17-13. Kentucky has the ball under a minute to go. First of all, fact that it's 17-13, you're in great position. But here's the crazy part. This is Kentucky now. You're in position to score, down 17-13 going into the half. You get to the Ole Miss 40-yard line with about 13 seconds left. Now, look, it's a long field goal, but it is a field goal attempt. You have 13 seconds left. By the way, you have timeouts. So you have an opportunity, in theory, to maybe quickly being the operative word, run one play. Or more, what I probably would have done, run the ball up the middle, line up the field goal kicker wherever he wants to kick from, and then boot a long field goal, okay? Instead, what happens? You're at the Ole Miss 40. You try to run one more play and get cute. Guess what happens? Disjointed play from the beginning, 5-yard penalty, procedural stuff. Then you're already scrambling, 5-yard penalty, Guess what happens next? You run a play, you get the play off. Unfortunately, it's a 10-yard penalty for holding. All of a sudden, you're completely out of field goal range. You take off any opportunity to score 3 points. And this was the worst part. And I know this, I saw Kentucky fans reacting to this. Sean McDonough and Greg McElroy were openly mocking the coaching on the broadcast. They basically were like, what was that? Sean McDonough, I think, was trying to be diplomatic, basically said like, yeah, procedural stuff has sort of been an issue in Mark Stoops' time at Kentucky. And I'm not blaming Sean McDonough. He was 100% right. So there's no guarantee you get 3 points, but you put yourself in an opportunity where you can't even attempt to get 3 points when you were in field goal range with 13 seconds to go. Then in the second half, you're down 27-20 early in the fourth quarter, okay? And again, you're trailing, but you're in the game. By the way, you would have loved those 3 points before halftime, right? Well, with about 8 minutes to go, you are definitely in field goal range. With 7:50 left, Ole Miss hasn't moved the ball incredibly well. You're definitely in field goal range, as I said, 37 yards. It would have been a 37-yard field goal, okay? This is, again, you're down 27-23 with 7:50 left. I believe you had all your timeouts at that point. 27-23, 7:50 left. Or 27-20, excuse me, with 7:50 left. 7:50 is a lot of time when you have timeouts in a game like that at home. And Ole Miss hasn't been moving the ball like crazy, okay? You decide not to kick the field goal and go for it. 37-yarder, when your field goal kicker can absolutely make kicks from that distance, you instead decide to go for it. Just brain-dead behavior. Why? Because even if you get the first down, guess what? You still don't have points on the board. You still have to get a touchdown, and you leave yourself no margin for error, and all you're doing is taking more time off the clock. So it was idiotic. I saw one of the Kentucky media members, I don't know who it was off the top of my head, but basically insinuate like Mark Stoops goes for it so he can then say that he went for it and he can't accuse him of being conservative. But you take 3 points off the board there for sure. You could have had 3 points before the half. And then, oh, by the way, you get the ball back the next possession. You go 3 and out with Ole Miss. You get the ball back. You're in field goal range again. But now you definitely have to go for it because there's only 2 or 3 minutes left. And then, oh, by the way, you know what the worst part was as somebody who had the under? Then Ole Miss kicks the field goal to go up whatever it was, 30-20. You hit the big play. Mark Stoops doesn't even realize that he needs to kick the field goal right there to go down 7 and kick the onside. Then Lane Kiffin calls the timeout, whatever. I'm getting too in the weeds. But the point I'm trying to make is that even late in the game, when I'm like, oh no, Mark Stoops is going to kick the field goal here. It's going to go over. I'm going to lose my bet. I'm sitting there saying he didn't even realize it. And then Ole Miss calls a timeout, and you see Mark Stoops on the broadcast like, oh yeah, I should probably kick the field goal, huh? And then the onside kick. Onside kick's no good. Ole Miss wins. Credit Ole Miss on the road, whatever. The story's not Ole Miss. The story is this is the same exact Mark Stoops that we've seen over the years. Now, listen, we always have to do the Mark Stoops caveat, right? We have to credit him for the levels that he brought Kentucky to in a previous era, right? But we also have to acknowledge previous era, Vandy was way worse than they are now. Florida was hitting all-time lows, although they may have hit an all-time low on Saturday. South Carolina was down. Well, now all of those programs are up, and I'll be real, it just feels like it's run its course, right? Because it's almost what we just said with Billy Napier. It's not just that you lose. It's the manner in which you lose. In year 12 or 13, you don't know how to manage the clock. You don't know. I mean, just think about who was watching Friday night, the Los Angeles Chargers, Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City in 10 seconds ran their offense off the field, the special teams on the field, and kicked like a 58-yard field goal, okay? I'm not saying you have to have that with college kids, but that was clearly well coached. That was clearly preparation. That was clearly something that Andy Reid had thought about and, kind of distilled it to his teammates, to his team, I mean. And Mark Stoops is the exact opposite. What did Mark Stoops do? Instead of having his team ready to go, making the worst decisions at the worst time, and that's kind of who he's been. Listen, he got a lot of wins throughout his time at Kentucky. We have to give him credit for that. The counter to that is that if we're being fair and we're being honest, there's also been a lot of winnable games where he just makes weird decisions. Go back to Georgia last year. I don't remember all the details. I do remember him punting inside the 50-yard line when basically if Georgia got the ball back and got a first down, the game was over. Whatever. But this is who he is. This is who he's been. He's always had to win on the margins. And when you have to win on the margins and you're not good in situational football, it's never going to work out well. And so it feels like it's run its course. I still go back to what I said from the beginning. I understand what the buyout is. I understand that if Mark Stoops wants to be the coach next year or just doesn't want to give up money, there's really not much Kentucky can do. We talked about the Stoops buyout compared to the DeBoer buyout last week, and Stoops is one of those guys. I think he's owed every dollar, $35, $40 million within 60 days of being fired. So shout out his agent, but I still go back to what I said from the beginning is if this is another 4-8 type year, if this is another 3-9 type year, is he coming back again? I don't see it. I think he's kind of at a loss for words. I think he used this offseason to claim that last year was a one-off deal. And I think if next year it's going to be much the same, you're going to come back with an even tougher schedule, 9 SEC games. You're going to come back to a place that doesn't want you. And by the way, I'm not blaming you, Kentucky fans. I think you have every right to be frustrated. Now, who do you get? Can you get John Summerall, the former Kentucky assistant coach? Blah, blah, blah. We'll find out. But I don't think it's unfair for Kentucky fans to expect more. I don't think it's unfair for Kentucky fans to expect that your coach knows how to use timeouts and knows how to run 2-minute offense and 2-minute defense and know when to kick the field goal and know when to not kick the field goal. It was so disappointing because the game was there for a win. I know if you're not a Kentucky fan, you're saying, Torres, it's Kentucky. They're Ole Miss. What are you freaking out about? That game was there for the win. That game was certainly, you were in position if you just did the fundamentals. Kentucky does the exact opposite. It's so disappointing. Producer Matt, we can do one or two Kentucky. We have so much more that I still want to get to, but one or two Kentucky comments, and you can kind of, we'll go to a break after that. Okay. Luke, this is a great comment because I agree with this. Luke says, UK football fans give more to their program for less in return than any fan base. They get gaslighted into giving money for the same garbage year after year from Stoops and his staff. Listen, the money thing, I've been critical of Stoops with that. What was the quote? Pony up. Remember last year? I think it was last year they lost to Georgia, or 2 years ago they lost to Georgia. He goes, you want to be better, pony up. And then he goes in the summertime, he does that weird interview where he basically is like, yeah, my job, I don't get to coach anymore. I have to focus on raising NIL money. It's like, dude, that's part of the job. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. If you don't want to do it, by the way, guess what? You can now give back money. Brent Venables gave back money. Mike Norvell gave back money. Brian Kelly gave back money. If money is the issue, you can give it back, buddy. No excuses. Play like a champion. And then I think to Luke's first point, UK fans give more for their program for the same return, for less return than any fan base. I don't disagree with that because here's the thing. One, they get gaslighted every offseason. Not your fault. You want to believe your team's going to be good, right? I'm not blaming you. But two, it's the part about showing like coming off of a 4-8 season last year, it would have been so easy for there to be 22,000 people in that stadium yesterday and 12,000 of them wearing Ole Miss red. It wasn't that. I was watching there. Best I could tell, there was no empty seats in the house. Maybe there were. By the way, if you ever need tickets, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. But I bring it up because Kentucky fans showed up. They were loud. They wanted something to believe in. Coaching staff let them down. There's one more really good comment, Matt. We'll get to it, and then we'll go. Luke, again, great comment again. It's time to have a conversation about Mitch Barnhart's future after getting bullied into this ridiculous one-sided contract to Callan Stoops. UK would have to pay Stoops $40 million within 60 days. So I'm right on the buyout, $40 million within 60 days. Mitch Barnhart's on his last legs. For people who don't know, he's like not only the longest tenured AD in the SEC, he's one of the longest tenured ADs nationally. Think about how quick AD jobs turn over. He was at Kentucky when they hired Calipari in 2009. It's 2025 right now. But yeah, this is a terrible contract. And I think at points Mark Stoops had leverage, but there's any good contract protects both sides. And you want to take care of your guy, but you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're backed into a corner. That's what I think Kentucky is right now. But I still go back to, you go 4-8 and you're getting booed every time you're walking off the field. If you're Mark Stoops, you're going to come back to do it all again next year. I don't believe it. Is there a mutual agreement? Is there a number in the middle? I don't know. It's bad. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, come back, hit on the rest of a busy weekend. Talking about bad, we're going to talk Nico Iamaleava. We're going to talk Bill Belichick because it's just getting weird there. And we'll talk a little bit about Bama, Texas, Arch. Quick break. Be right back.
What's up, everybody? It's AT, and I've told you before, when I'm on the road, when I'm podcasting, sometimes you end up looking like a slob. Look at me, mismatched socks. I'm wearing shorts. What am I doing? the folks at Firebox said, Torres, let's get you some fresh gear to look better when you're on camera. Well, what do you think? This is all part of the spring collection for Firebox. These jeans, perfect when I want to go to games, casual, serious, business casual, you name it. Got the quarter zip. And oh, by the way, we got this perfect zip. This is the perfect spring, summer zip that you can wear when you're out with friends. Maybe it gets a little chilly. Maybe it's a little chilly in the morning. Perfect for all occasions. So this is what I need you to do. If you like what you see, and you should, what I need you to do is visit Firebox.com. That's Firebox.com, F-I-O-B-O-C. By the way, Firebox has a special promo code for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Use promo code Torres and get 20% off your purchase. Thank you again to Firebox. By the way, make sure that you're following them on social media at Firebox, F-I-O-B-O-C. Thank you, Firebox.
All right, everybody. All right, back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. We still got a lot to get to, so I'll try to be quick, at least on these first couple topics. One, I want to just talk about some big picture stuff. You know, Alabama, if you listen to this show this week, Torres had a lot to say on Alabama. And it wasn't really that I had a lot to say. It was that Alabama put us in a position where I had no choice but to talk about them. Well, they heard the noise. They get the win 73-0 against UL Monroe, okay? I think there's a couple stories here where I'm not going to overreact. Now, people could say I may have overreacted to Florida State last week. I actually disagree. In my opinion, it was disappointing because of the manner in which they lost. It's not just that they lost. It's the fact that they got bullied. All the same issues popped up from a year ago. You also go back to last year, for the most part, when they would have a bad performance, they would bounce back with a good performance. And then you'd sit there and say, okay, they figured it out. They're going to get going, blah, 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 this and that. And so forgive me if I don't care about the UL Monroe game. What I want to see, can you do this against good teams? Can you do this, not 73-0, but can you be successful against teams that Alabama is supposed to be successful against? Forget Georgia later in the month. You know, South Carolina, that's a team that Alabama historically has beaten, you know, whatever. I know they lost to them on the road under Nick Saban, but you get the point. LSU, you've won 2 straight. What about that? That's at home. Tennessee, Joey Aguilar, can you get the win? Whatever. So I'm not going to freak out. Credit to Alabama. They did what they had to do. I don't think we can accurately judge them probably until the Georgia game, but I'll say this. You know, Wisconsin, with Luke Fickell quietly getting back to their roots, top 5 in the country in total defense, in scoring defense. I know the opponents have been Miami of Ohio and Middle Tennessee State, so it'll be a much bigger challenge in Tuscaloosa next week. But I just bring it up because I don't think Wisconsin is a walkover, but even if you get through Wisconsin next week, guess what? Georgia in Athens to open SEC play. I think it could be really bad. And I'm not ready. You know, I'm not going to poo-poo DeBoer when he got a win and he got a dominant win in a manner in which he had to do it. But I guess I just still have some questions. I'm not too excited. You know, I still have some questions about Arch Manning. Okay, so I saw a lot of Arch Manning discourse on Saturday afternoon. Texas playing San Jose State. Arch Manning, to his credit, looks very good. Obviously was not very good against Ohio State. Ohio State's a very good team. Saturday, much better. 19 of 30 passing, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. All 4 touchdowns, by the way, came like in a 6-minute stretch, middle of the first quarter to the middle of the second quarter. But I will say this. I saw a lot of conversation about like, oh, you know, well, who's getting the last laugh about Arch now? It was a total overreaction to Ohio State. I don't think it was a total overreaction. It wasn't that they lost to Ohio State. It was that he looked completely overwhelmed. He looked completely uncomfortable from the first pass that he threw in the dirt until late in the game when he threw an interception to seal the victory. By the way, never forget, last year, we all remember, or a lot of people don't, he played against Georgia in the first game against Georgia at home. He looked like a deer in headlights. So I'm sorry that in a game and basically a quarter against elite competition, he has not looked good. He has not looked elite. And I just go back to, if you're Texas, it is national championship expectations this year. You have the defense. You have the wide receivers. You have the run game. Is the quarterback good enough? And so it's great that you looked good against San Jose State. But to me, you know what I care about? How are you going to look when you're playing at Georgia? How are you going to look when you're playing A&M to end the regular season? By the way, the Florida game I thought was going to be tougher. Maybe it won't be tough by the time you get to Florida in a couple weeks. but I just bring it up because Arch Manning is the same to me as what I just said about Alabama. It's hard for me to get excited. It's hard for me to overreact. It's hard for me to say that something has been figured out or that we should completely dismiss what we saw in week 1 because Arch looked good against San Jose State. So we'll see what happens. Two very manageable games for Texas in the coming 2 weeks. They face UTEP and Sam Houston at home. Then the SEC slate opens up at Florida, then Oklahoma. By the way, your first 4 SEC games are all away from Austin, at Florida, Oklahoma and Dallas, at Kentucky, at Mississippi State. It ain't going to be easy. Not terrible, but it ain't going to be easy. Those are the games that are going to define Arch Manning. All right, really quickly, you know who I want to talk about? I want to talk about Bill Belichick and the North Carolina Tar Heels, okay? So bottom line with Bill Belichick, so I'll be real. I think I was maybe in the middle on Bill Belichick. I didn't think, like when he came to college football and he's like, I got the blueprint and we're going to have an NFL-style front office and we're going to use NIL. And I was like, well, you know who else has an NFL-style front office? Ohio State and LSU and Miami and Florida and Alabama and whoever. So I don't think you're reinventing the wheel. All the NIL stuff, great. You know who else has money? Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, Texas, Texas A&M, whoever. But at the same time, I sat there and said, look, it's the ACC. I don't think Bill Belichick has completely lost his fastball. I don't think he's a great offensive coach, but I think he's so good defensively that in most games, I think he'll have a little bit of a schematic advantage and, he'll be able to grind out ugly wins, but, 24-16 wins, 20-10 wins like that. And then, oh, by the way, you look at UNC's schedule. You look at the fact that, yes, they play Clemson, but guess what? They don't play SMU. They don't play Louisville. They don't play Florida State. They don't play Miami. I was like, they're going to get 8-9 wins because I think Bill Belichick's going to figure it out. I think he'll be fine. I don't think he'll be great. I do think at some point, you're paying him $10 million a year. He's got to win some big games. He's got to have you in playoff contention. But in year 1, it's going to be fine. I bring it up because that was my thought coming in. And I wasn't even negative coming out of week 1 when they lost to TCU. I said, look, a lot of missed tackles, a lot of whatever, blah, 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 this and that. But what I will say is it continues to get weird, okay? So on Friday, so this was after we did our Thursday show. Thursday's our last show of the week. Friday's kind of a prep day for the weekend. There was a story that came out that Bill Belichick had banned the New England Patriots from the North Carolina football facilities this year. And basically he was saying, you're not welcome, blah, 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 this and that. But I think it was basically an internet rumor. I don't know if it was confirmed by any of the heavy hitters, the Schefters, the whoever's, but it felt like, okay, it's kind of this internet story. Does it really mean anything? What's the big deal? Should we care? Should we not care? Whatever. Well, I bring it up because after the game on Saturday, now to Bill Belichick's credit, North Carolina did get their first win of the Belichick era, 20-3 over Charlotte. Again, not the most inspiring, but listen, credit to them. The defense looked much better. Charlotte is not TCU. They did jump out to a 17-3 lead before cruising to the victory. Holds Charlotte to about, they were great against the run, not so much against the pass, whatever. So they get the win. But after the game, Belichick is asked, hey, what's with this story with the New England Patriots? Is it true? Is it not true? Well, he gave an answer, and he didn't really beat around the bush about whether it's true, whether he banned the New England Patriots or not. Matt, you can play this out.
Comment on that and provide some sort of explanation on that.
Yeah, well, no, it's clear that I'm not welcome there around their facility, and so they're not welcome in ours. Pretty simple.
So Bill Belichick, not afraid to acknowledge, yeah, that report that about the New England Patriots being banned from the North Carolina facilities, absolutely true. I'm not welcome at their facility, so they're not welcome at ours. Listen, I bring it up to say, is this the worst thing that has ever happened in the history of sports? No. But what I do think is that it speaks to me that Bill Belichick, it's not about winning at North Carolina. It's about winning on his terms. I don't think it's the best. And I'm starting to wonder, did I overvalue what Bill Belichick could do at North Carolina? And is this thing going to be a disaster? Okay, so first of all, it's just a bad look banning the New England Patriots from your facility. I understand there's bad blood. I understand you clearly don't like Robert Kraft. We all watched that, Brady roast when they kind of forced you to take a shot with Kraft and nobody wanted to and you didn't want to, but you did it. You were a good trooper. You're a good sport, whatever. Okay. I get that things are bad. But ultimately, what I will say is at the end of the day, the job of a college football coach, listen, I know we live in this NIL world. I know we live in this portal world. I know we live in a world where there's less kind of, what's the right word? Is that there's just the relationships aren't what they once were. But at the end of the day, I do still believe that the job of a college football coach is to help better young men. Most of these guys aren't going to play in the NFL. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. Can you help them become better men? Can you help them become better people? Can you help prepare them for life? But for the ones that are going to be NFL players, you're doing a disservice to them simply for petty reasons. And so it's clearly not about the players, because if it was about the players, you'd put your ego aside and you'd say, you know what? I hate Robert Kraft. I hate the Patriots. I'm not welcome there. But you know what? It's about Gio Lopez. It's about this guy. It's about that guy. It's about doing what is best for these kids. And we're going to let all 32 teams in because, again, we're trying to claim that we're this futuristic NFL model come to the college level. It's like, well, if you're the futuristic model that's coming to the college level, guess what? You have to be pro-friendly and you have to let teams into your facility. Listen, think about all the great coaches in college football, right? Nick Saban, you can say whatever you want, but nothing is ahead of, I can say whatever you want. He's the greatest coach ever, but nothing's ahead of winning. You know, Nick Saban fired Lane Kiffin a week before the national championship game because he thought he wasn't prepared, because nothing comes before winning. Nothing comes before the team. Nothing comes before the program. You look across the rest of college football. Brian Kelly has had to evolve and adapt, and we think he now has a national championship team. I just bring it up because if you are truly being sincere, it should be about what's best for your players, what's best for your coaches, what's best for the program as a whole. And that's not what Bill Belichick is doing here by banning these scouts from the facility. So it's really bad. It's really ugly. And you know what I think it is? I think it's a metaphor, honestly, for what North Carolina is under Belichick. And again, I say this as somebody who didn't think it was going to be a total train wreck. But listen, isn't it kind of about, again, what I said to lead the segment, that it's about winning, but it's about winning on Bill Belichick's terms, and it's not really about winning if it comes with caveats? But think about it, right? This is a metaphor, because what's going on behind the scenes? We all know the Jordan Hudson situation is weird, okay? And my stance on Jordan Hudson has not changed since the spring. We talked about it then. We'll talk about it now. I don't care who Bill Belichick is dating. Like I said, I said this in the spring, what you do in the comfort of your own home with you and your partner, you know, as long as it's of legal age and nothing illegal's going on, I don't care who you date and what you do and what your motives are, what her motives are. I do not care. But at the same time, when you are the highest paid employee in North Carolina, the highest paid state employee in the state of North Carolina, and she very clearly has a role in your organization, we're allowed to ask questions. And that to me is the thing. It's like she clearly has a big say in what goes on. She apparently was doing press conferences for their Hulu documentary or whatever. I don't even know. I'm not watching it, but she was doing press conferences, whatever. She was at the game in a box. Then I saw video of her on the field, like bothering Bill. It's like, what are we doing? You have that. By the way, the coaching staff, I didn't realize quite how nepotistic, I think that's a word, that coaching staff is. Stephen Belichick's there. Listen, I have no problem. Stephen Belichick was a defensive coordinator at Washington last year. Somebody besides Bill Belichick thinks Stephen Belichick can run a defense. But you look at the rest of the staff. You look at who else is on that staff. One, Belichick's other son is on the staff. And then two, you have a bunch of guys from the Patriots that played for Bill Belichick that have no real experience either at the college level or coaching in general. You have a bunch of guys that are family friends. Mike Lombardi's your GM and his son's on staff. His son's a position coach. And I just go back to, again, is it about Bill Belichick winning, or is it about winning on his terms, on his rules, and only if it's under his rules? Is it what is best for the program, or is it what is best for the program given all these caveats for Bill Belichick? So I thought this story was a metaphor. I thought this was a good way to move it forward because Bill Belichick is not even denying that he's basically barred the New England Patriots from the facility. Insane story. Absolutely insane. Belichick's kind of a train wreck, and that was one I might have been wrong on. Really quickly, one more story. And one more story that, you know what, this one I was not wrong on. We got to spend a few minutes talking about Nico Iamaleava and the UCLA Bruins. And I'll be transparent. At this point, I actually am starting to feel a little bit bad. I know a Tennessee fan watching would disagree. Matt, let's start over. We're live, but we're going to pretend that first 10 seconds didn't happen. We'll start from here. Let's switch gears. Let's talk Nico Iamaleava and the UCLA Bruins to close the show, okay? And so let me say this. We are going to talk about him. At some point we won't, but this story is absolutely unbelievable. And I know the role that Nico played. I know the role that his dad played. I know the role that the agent played, whatever. I am starting to feel bad for him, though. But we got to go ahead and discuss this because on Saturday night in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, my favorite city in the world, UCLA went to play the UNLV Rebels. The UNLV Rebels final score in this one, 30-23. And whether you feel bad for Nico, maybe you don't. Maybe you're a Tennessee fan that says, I don't care about that kid, whatever. I am starting to feel a little bit bad, but more importantly, I think this is very much quickly becoming a cautionary tale of everything that can go wrong in the NIL era, okay? So first of all, let's give some context here. UCLA is playing at UNLV. Don't know how much y'all know about UNLV, but remember, Dan Mullen is now the head coach. And on top of Dan Mullen being the head coach, guess what? They nearly lost to Idaho State in week 0. Idaho State, an FCS team, not even a good FCS team, mind you. UNLV almost lost to them. So UNLV goes to Las Vegas. They end up falling down 23-0 in this game before rallying to make it competitive at least. UNLV puts up a touchdown. UCLA trails 30, whatever it would be, 30-23. They have the ball late. Nico throws a pick to seal the loss. Now, in defense of Nico, he didn't play bad. And I can be critical of how he left Tennessee, the circumstances, worst decision I've ever seen. But at the same time, he actually looked pretty good. Now, again, it's UNLV. You know, guys don't get drafted off of a good game against UNLV. But he did play well. 29-41 passing, 255 yards, 11 rushes, including a rushing touchdown. I actually thought this was one of the better games that I've personally seen him play. Admittedly, it's against UNLV. A lot different than Ohio State in the playoff. A lot different than Alabama. A lot different than Oklahoma, whoever he played against with Tennessee. But at the same time, UCLA's 0-2. UCLA is not going to be very good this year. I think we're looking at legitimately like potentially a 2-10 type season. I think there's not a 0% chance that Deshaun Foster gets fired after this year. And this is just quickly becoming just one of the biggest bag drops in recent sports. I was talking to my producer at Fox Sports Radio about it. By the way, my Fox Sports Radio podcast, do me a favor, download it. We have it pinned at the top of the chat here. But this is an all-time bag drop. And I was talking to my Fox Sports Radio producer. Has there ever been a worse decision financially than the one that Nico had? Because you can't help but think about not only where he is, but what he gave up. Because whether he was selfish, whether his family was selfish, whatever, somebody was selfish, somebody wanted more money. But think about what he gave up. He was at a school where he would have been, win or lose, by the way, revered. Tennessee went through a lot of bad years, and guess what? They still revere all their players. I respect the hell out of Tennessee, how the fan base responds, how they treat their players, how they whatever. But he is at, I don't want to say a one-of-one fan base because there's a lot of great fan bases in college football. But the short list of like great fan bases in college football. You're playing in front of 100,000 people every week, and you're coming off of a college football playoff appearance. Like the whole point, what does Herm Edwards say, right? Forget all the NIL money. Listen, everybody's got to pay bills, whatever. But you play to win the game. And you went 10-2 last year. You made the college football playoff. And then I know I said it's not only about money. You're making $2 million a year. And you gave all that up to go to a place where you're probably going to go 2-10, where your coach is going to get fired, where you were down 23-0 to the UNLV Rebels. Okay. And what makes it worse, listen, I understand Nico's going through some stuff. There was a report that his mom is sick. I want to be clear. If it's true, and I think it's true because I've independently kind of confirmed that, we wish her a speedy recovery. We can have football disagreements while also wishing health and happiness on the family. I can't speak for anybody else. I hope the mom makes a full recovery. I hope she's great, whatever. But at the same time, I will also say this, is that it doesn't justify the decision. And you can't tell me, well, he's only wanted to do it because he wanted to come home. Well, that's actually not really how it all played out at all, right? Because now I think this is going to be the next thing. Is they've been trying to sell for a month now since Big Ten Media Days that it was all about family and he wanted to be closer to home and this and that and whatever. Well, first of all, there are contractual obligations, right? At last I heard, Arkansas is in the middle of suing his younger brother for breaching of a contract. Tennessee isn't going that route. But one, there's contractual understanding. Two, beyond that, none of your behaviors indicated when you left that it was actually about family, right? Because we all remember that Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The report comes out. You're at practice. Everything's going well. You're at, I believe, what was it, Joey Halsey's house that night. Everything's going well. Then the next day, you don't show up. Nobody can get a hold of you. If it was just about family, all you had to do from the beginning was tell us, dude, there's a situation going on back home. I got to get back. I wish it wasn't this way. Everybody would have understood. But you go silent. You sneak out the side door. It's very clear that it's about money. Oh, by the way, it's about personnel, whatever, that you're not happy with. Well, personnel isn't better at UCLA. And then, oh, by the way, for anybody that's going to be like, well, it was clearly about family. He just wanted to get closer to home. Let's never forget. How did Tennessee find out about this? It's because Oregon reached out and was like, somebody's reaching out to us, trying to convince us to take Nico, right? Ole Miss, Ohio State. If it was about family, I'm sorry. Last time I checked the map, Columbus ain't all that much closer to Long Beach, California than Knoxville is. Oxford, Mississippi ain't much closer to Long Beach, California than Knoxville is. And so it was never really about family. I feel terrible about the family situation. But the more that we watch this unfold, the more that this is just going to go down as an all-time bad decision. Again, I think this team's going 2-10. I mean, we don't have to go through the UCLA schedule here on a Saturday or Sunday in early September, but they still have Penn State. They still have at Indiana, who I think is good, Nebraska, Ohio State, Washington, and USC. I just named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams. They ain't being any of them, okay? Northwestern, you got to go on the road next week. Michigan State, maybe. Maryland, maybe. Whatever. A best case scenario is like 5-7. And again, I understand maybe family did play some decision, but at the end of the day, the goal was still to get to the NFL where you make generational money. So you gave up playing for a great fan base, 100,000 people, elite offensive head coach, in a position where you can win and you're getting developed for the pros, to now go to a program where you're probably going to go, I think 5-7 is the ceiling. I think probably 2-10 is the floor, maybe worse. And then on top of it, what's Deshaun Foster's future? What's your future? Are you getting better and NFL ready? I don't think so. And so I could go, I don't even want to pick on Nico at this point, but it's a story. And it will continue to be a story because it continues to be the great bag drop of all time. And again, it's the basics, right? Worse situation, less money. Now it's even worse than we could have anticipated. And I don't think that program has reached rock bottom. This isn't even an anti-Nico thing, but it is a story, and we have to discuss the big stories. And Nico's going to be a cautionary tale real quick. All right, I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead and I think get out of here. The chat has been so lively that I don't even know where to begin. I appreciate their support. Woo Pig Warrior says, how short is the leash on Billy Napier after the home loss to South Florida? Woo Pig, I know you probably just joined us. We did about 12, 13 minutes on Billy Napier. Go back and check it out. It ain't good, though. I don't see a scenario where he's going to be back because, as you say, the schedule is brutal. For those who missed it, they have 10 games left. 8 of them are against ranked opponents. One is not. One of the unranked opponents that is still on Florida's schedule is Mississippi State, who just beat Arizona State and will probably be ranked. So realistically, probably 9 of their final 10 opponents will be ranked in the top 25 come Monday. Luke Schumacher, great comment. Luke Shoemaker, great comment. The fact that Heupel has turned Joey Aguilar, who was mid at App State, into a world beater is a huge feather in his cap. So I agree. Tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. By the way, I'll say this, for a quiet Saturday, great audience. We appreciate your support here on a Sunday morning. 2, get excited because next week's going to be bananas. Florida LSU all of a sudden takes on a different connotation Saturday night in Baton Rouge, in Death Valley. Tennessee hosting Georgia. I bring that up because, as Luke says, Joey Aguilar looks pretty freaking good. So we'll discuss those games. We got a busy week to discuss it all, but for now, I do think we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. An hour 15 on a Sunday here in September. Appreciate your support. Download, subscribe, rate, review.